The Islamic Jihad that began in the 7th century continues today. The expansion of Western power into the Islamic world in past centuries gave the impression that the fangs of holy war had been pulled. But since World War II ended, jihadi expansion has vengefully resurged. Asia and Africa have seen kidnappings, beheadings, arson, and infidels burned alive. In Europe, the modus operandi is immigration jihad. Muslims flood in, legally or illegally, establishing separate no-go communities that civil authorities dare not enter. Muslims comprised 4.9% of Europe's population in 2016, constituting more than 8% in Sweden, France, and Bulgaria. The high birth rate of Muslims and more immigration suggest growing percentages. Statista projects that by 2050, the Muslim population will exceed 17% in Germany, France, and the UK. Demography is destiny. As the Muslim population expands, it throws its weight around, influencing municipal and state authorities through accusations of racism and intimidation by threats of violence. The next step with a growing population is electoral influence and pushing for laws supporting Islamic supremacy. A poll by IFOP indicated that 46% of foreign-born Muslims in France want Sharia law practiced there. This percentage was 18% among French-born Muslims. At this rate, most European countries will become Islamic Emirates in a few decades, except for some Eastern European countries, which refuse the European Union dictates to open their gates. Western European countries demean their own cultures and history to justify the admission of many antagonistic immigrants. Britain and France opened the doors to Muslim immigrants from their old colonies. Some countries claim they do not have a culture or that it is boring, so they welcome Muslims whom they call colorful, as in Norway and Sweden. These countries seem unconcerned about illegal migrants who they are reluctant to expel. These migrants get every welfare measure imaginable, from stipends to free housing to unemployment payments. Then, when the immigrants fail to learn the local language, get jobs, or respect the authority of municipal employees and officers, governments rebuke themselves for failing to integrate the immigrant population. According to Real Clear investigations, the data show that each 1 percentage point increase in the immigrant population is associated with a 3.6% increase in the homicide rate. In 2020, a study by Swedish sociology professor Goran Adamsson concluded that from 2002 to 2017, 58% of criminal suspects in Sweden were immigrants. That figure rose to 73% for murder, attempted murder and manslaughter, and 70% for robberies. Researchers in Denmark found crime in 2020 was 51% higher among male immigrants and 149% higher among male offspring with a non-Western background than among the entire male population. Since 2018, Sweden authorities have recorded about 500 bombings and found gang shootings increasingly common. The country reported a record 124 homicides in 2020. Violent riots in April that year injured more than 100 police officers. France has seen stabbings and beheadings by Muslims and truck attacks on crowds. Germany has suffered car and truck attacks and repeated stabbings of random citizens in schools and public meetings, as has Britain. Sweden has become the rape capital of Europe. And guess who is responsible? A study on Sweden published by the US National Institutes of Health reveals a strong link between immigrant background and rape convictions. In Britain, notorious Pakistani rape gangs fed alcohol and drugs to underage and vulnerable English infidel girls and kept them isolated except for the multiple Pakistani men who repeatedly raped them. Authorities knew this, but they were afraid of being called racist, so they arrested the girls for being drunk and disorderly. Why would Muslims engage in rape at a higher level? First, European women aren't modest by Muslim standards, so many Muslim men regard them as whores. Second, under Islamic Sharia law, Muslim men are permitted to enslave infidels and make infidel women their sex slaves. Some young men arrested for rape have tried to justify their actions by saying that their religion permits it, or that they have a right by conquest. But do not mention any of this in Europe today, or you will be arrested and incarcerated. Muslims are a protected class, and no one must say anything pejorative about Muslims or about Islam. Europe has instituted Islamic heresy laws and let Sharia trump civil rights and human rights. In 2024, Lucy Connolly was convicted of incitement to racial hatred in England. In an ex-post she quickly deleted and later apologized for, she called for mass deportations of illegal immigrants and for the hotels that housed them to be set on fire. She was sentenced to 31 months behind bars. Europe has chosen suicide and imported its own executioners. Shall the US and Canada follow this same route to the same destiny?